Your 20s are going to be some of the most interesting periods of your life, and for different people, they'll be at different stages within this period of life. For some in their early 20s, they'll be either at university, working a part-time job, maybe earning $300 to $500 a week, and for others, they'll be working a full-time job, possibly earning double that. But once you start getting towards your mid-20s, everybody at this point should have had some kind of work experience or have worked and made some money. And this is where you tend to develop some financial habits and fall into many of these financial traps that I've seen some of my friends and personally I've fallen into as well in the past. Now, the first of these financial traps and the most common one is eating out. Now, when you start working in a work environment where you're working at 9 to 5, it's so easy to get caught up and go out to have lunches, go and grab a coffee in the morning, and do all those other things that your colleagues and friends are doing as well. And generally, when people grab coffees, it's never a small. It's always medium or large. They might add some syrup into it, or it might be a frappe, which costs drastically more than maybe a $3 small coffee. And when you go out for lunch, you can easily get a $10 lunch, but most people don't. They opt for, something that tastes a bit better because, they deserve it, and often overpay for the drink on the side. And although this doesn't seem like much because maybe on a day-to-day basis, it might be $15 a day here, $12 a day there, but over time, people tend to switch things up because, it gets tiring eating the same stuff over and over again. And then they might treat themselves once or twice a week because, it works hard and they deserve it. And what began as a harmless $12 average day lunch becomes a $25 lunch, becomes a couple of beers at the end of work, and it can all add up quite drastically. Speaking of beers, there's also the drinking component of becoming an adult. Once you turn 18 in many parts of the world, or 21 in the States, you're now able to go to pubs, clubs, smash a few drinks, and because you're going to get smashed on drinks, you're not going to really be thinking straight and constantly smashing your credit or debit card and racking up a huge bill. I've seen my friend rack up $400 a night just in drinks alone. And if you're into drinking and enjoy the social aspect of going out to pubs and clubs, obviously do it, it'll be alright, you'll be good. But just be conscious about how much each drink costs because the drinks at each of these venues can get quite expensive. Now, the venues obviously understand that they've got a really good spot in the city or something like that, so then they can charge you a higher price. And they know that you'll be less likely not to get a drink. Another thing to also be really wary of is that one friend that always asks you to pay for the drinks and then he'll get you next time. Odds are he never gets you next time and he actually just leaves you with a bill for $15. And when it comes to eating out, I'm fairly basic. I just cook some protein, chicken in most cases because it's easy, and have it with some form of carb, generally rice and vegetables. I do eat out about once or twice a week because, well, I'm human and there's only so much rice and chicken I can eat before I go insane. In saying that, the meals that I do eat generally ranges between $10 and $15. Anything over $20 to $25 I consider like a luxury thing to go out and eat. So even eating out, I generally keep it within a pretty tight budget. Now, the second trap you should avoid is paying for subscription services. Now, increasingly in the past couple of years, there's been an increase in subscription services. You look at VPNs, Netflix, your Spotify's, and all that, just because it retains a customer over a period of time, and it's great revenue for the company. Now, most of us will have a Spotify account and a Netflix account, and together they make about $20 a month. So on average per year, you're probably departing from your $240 that you've worked for. But if, like me, you want to keep these services, that's absolutely fine. Here are a couple tips and hints in lowering some of those costs. For Spotify, you can either find a friend who's a student and get the student discount, which is about $5 a month, or alternatively, you can get a group of friends together and get the family subscription, which is about $15, $16 a month. So if you have 4 people in the group, that generally is about $4 a month they have to pay. The issue with this is that you obviously need one friend who's willing to put their card on the line and pay for it per month, and hope that the friends that you have within your family subscription pay you back on time. Now, luckily for myself, I have a friend who's nominated their credit card, and I automate payments of $4 every single month, so I don't even have to think about it. Because the worst thing you can do is chase up your friends for money, especially when it's petty change like $4, and it can become really, really, really awkward. Like, dude, just give me my money. It's $4, bro. For Netflix, it's very similar. Get one person to pay for the whole family package, which I think is about 4 users, and then each individual pays that one person who's nominated their card back on a monthly basis. Now, when we're talking about subscription services, look at the other services that you've subscribed to online. See if whether you can actually live without them, or whether you're even using them on a monthly basis that justifies the price that they're charging. Obviously, if you're not using it, just cancel it, because some of that money can seriously just go to lunch instead. Gym memberships is another form of a subscription service that many people may have, and generally when they sign up to a gym, they never really go to shop later on for other cheaper prices or other alternatives to that one gym that they've been at for a couple months, couple years. But with the greater awareness in fitness and improving your health, there's been many local gyms that have opened up, especially around my area in Queensland, and many of them actually compete on prices. So I definitely have a shop around and look at how cheap certain gyms are, but also have in mind how practical it is to get to and from the place, because you might be going there 3 to 5 times a week. If you do not intend on moving away from the gym that you're at because it's great, there might be a few ways that you can try to reduce those fees. So the first, again, is still shopping around at your local gyms, seeing what the prices are, and then negotiating with your current gym to obviously lower those rates. For these gyms, it's way better to retain a client than lose them and have to acquire a new one, because the acquisition cost to acquire a new one would be much greater than just possibly lowering their monthly cost for their gym membership. The other way you could possibly reduce your gym membership is paying for it annually. So if you're fortunate enough to have the money just on the side, good to go, just pay for the gym membership upfront. Generally, the upfront annual gym membership payment is cheaper than if you paid it on a monthly subscription, because that way the gym can ensure that they retain you as a customer or your money, and this guarantees that they have their money no matter what, regardless of whether you decide to leave within that 12-month period that you've paid for. The final form of fees or subscriptions that you might be paying for is within your bank account that you may have with a certain bank, or certain credit cards that you might have that might be charging you for on an annual or monthly basis. Now, in Australia and financial services all around the world, there are so many products and banks that are competing with each other that there's absolutely no reason why you should be paying any bank fees, credit card fees, or anything like that to be using their services to hold your money. Now, the only time I would ever pay for a credit card fee is if the value of the card or the bank account exceeds what I'm paying for in fees. So for example, for me, I pay about $250 a year on my ANZ Rewards Travelers card, but it provides me 2 lounge pass accesses per year, a return domestic flight through Virgin Airline. Both of these valued around $280, give or take. But the main reason why I signed up for this card was to get 80,000 velocity bonus points for spending $1,500, which I was going to spend anyways. And paying my annual fee was part of the cost. Now, $80,000, if you've watched my video on the ANZ travel card, link somewhere either below or up there, it gets you a business class flight one way to most parts of Asia, or return economy flight to and from Asia on Virgin Airlines or their partner, Singapore Airlines. So unless you're using these accounts or cards to benefit you in some formal ways, please do not be paying any fees for your bank accounts or cards that you're using. Now, the third money trap is funding your lifestyle with credit cards, or just the misuse of credit cards in general. Now, I've touched on how I use credit cards in the previous money trap, and honestly, I only ever use the credit card to purchase things that I'm already gonna buy anyways. I haven't seen many clients and friends misuse credit cards. There are a few flaws psychologically that people go through when it comes to credit cards and using them. I think a lot of people, when they use the credit card, they can't differentiate the difference between a credit card and cash, because a credit card, when you use it, it's something that you can use immediately. You get the item immediately, so you get the instant gratification from the purchase or from the item, as opposed to cash that you have to save up for, which takes a much longer time to do to purchase your big items. Now, obviously, I can see which one's going to be easier for the average consumer to go and do. And because of that, they then just swipe the credit card way too often without having to actually save up and put in the hard work up front to purchase the item. And when it comes to credit cards, I've probably heard it all. You've got people who are really good at budgeting saying, oh, I'm really good at budgeting, I should be able to handle a credit card, no worries, easy peasy. But there are so many psychological traps that you can fall into, and I've fallen into this myself personally. When I got my first credit card with Commonwealth Bank, loved the bank, not ripping on the bank at all, this is just me. And the issue is that you build the habit of actually swiping your card and tapping your card every single time you make a purchase. And what that does is distances you from money physically leaving your hand and creates another form or habit of payment, which is much easier to see and do. The second part of this, and probably one that catches most people off guard, including myself, was not seeing the money actually leave my account. Now, I knew that I had to pay the balances, and normally I'd pay the balance maybe every 2 weeks. I'd go back and check and then pay the balance off, because I'm not going to do it every single time I make a transaction, like a $2 purchase at Woolworths or something like that. But even that, leaving it for 2 weeks and paying the balance off, falsifies how much money you actually have within your account, because you never actually see the money leave. Now, hopefully you're not funding your lifestyle with credit cards, but the worst thing you can do, even if you're really good at budgeting, is not clearing your balances more often with the cash that you currently have. And again, by not clearing it, what you're doing is just falsifying how much money you have. And this can snowball quite drastically, because 2 weeks can be turned into a month, can turn into 55 days, and you're waiting until the last day, but at this point you've spent even more money because you thought you had more money in your actual main, and then it just clear your balances more often. And I remember before I got my first credit card, I told the exact same messages to myself that, I'm good at budgeting, it'll be alright, all this kind of stuff. But you really don't understand until you experience it for yourself, the situation that you can get in by not paying the money off as soon as possible. Personally, if you don't need a credit card, I would honestly just cancel it as soon as possible, and just realize that it's not an emergency fund. I've heard a lot of people say, what if something happens? I'm going to use the credit card to pay for something off. Build your own emergency fund. Use actual cash to build an emergency fund, because trust me, you'll sleep much better at night than having your credit card under your pillow. Now, the fourth money trap to avoid within your 20s is buying a flashy car. Now, I understand that a car is a necessity for people in the modern world, and probably is one of the biggest purchase you might make in your early to mid 20s. Now, most people will buy an affordable car which can get them from A to B, which is the ideal situation. But what I've seen is people, after working for a few years full time, they start to look at what other people have, and all of a sudden the Toyota looks like it needs an upgrade to become an Audi or a Volkswagen or a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW. And this is where people get into the trap of keeping up with the Joneses. Now, if you're not sure what keeping up with the Joneses means, it basically is a concept where you look at your neighbors and look at what they have and set that as the benchmark of what you should be having and how you should be living your life. And it's a never-ending chase of trying to upgrade your lifestyle to somebody else's expectations. The justification behind keeping up with the Joneses generally is people just saying that they deserve to treat themselves, or looking at their car and thinking that, this one's a bit old, it needs to go, and really it's only been like 3 to 5 years that you've had the car for. The financial issue with this is many people actually can't afford to upgrade to some of these more expensive cars. So what do? They finance or lease a car that they can't afford to pay up front for and pay for it over time. My general rule when it comes to buying big purchases, whether it's cars, for me personally it's watches, if you can't pay for 8 to 10 of them, that means you can't afford one. Most people, when they say they can afford something, they go, honey, we can meet the repayments, all that kind of stuff. That's not actually being able to afford the item. That's being able to meet the repayments. Totally different concept, totally different thing. So if you're looking to buy a $20,000 car, make sure you have at least $200,000 in cash or investments beforehand before you do that, because a car isn't going to make you any forms of money. Actually, it'll lose you money in your asset pool. So because you're losing money off a car, you definitely want to minimize whatever costs or expenses that are going out to that. Now, people immediately, when they just look at the car, they think of the repayments or how much the upfront costs are, but then there's fuel. So if you're going from a car that takes unleaded to a premium, well, the costs are going to go up. Your rego is probably going to go up with it as well. Your insurance will go up because you've got a fancier car, and it costs the insurers a lot more if anything does go wrong. So there's much more to it than the upfront cost that people see and look at and just say, we can meet the repayments for this, no worries, all good. So again, when you purchase your first car, make sure it's very bare bones, obviously reliable, so go with your Toyotas, your Hondas, your Mazdas, and make sure that lasts you over a period of time. And if you do want to upgrade later, and everybody does, make sure that your car expenses and outgoings for it, including the repairs and whatnot, makes up about 10% of your take-home pay. Número 5 for people, what's 5 in Spanish? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is buying a new house or their first home. Now, I've worked with many young buyers in the past to purchase new properties, and most of them, particularly the ones with a young family, will tend to think that the place they live in and they buy now is what they're going to live in for the rest of their life. I mean, that's the Australian dream, that's the American dream, whatever dream you can think of, that's the ideal dream, is that you buy a home that you can live in for the rest of your life. And because of that, they want something really flashy, really nice, something that they can see themselves growing into over a period of time. And because of this, many people buy off-the-plan properties, brand new builds, or things that are just way out of their price range. Now, buyers, when they're buying their first home, generally tend to have a budget, and coming into it, they think of it in a rational process and with less emotions. But after having a look at a few homes and it being sold by the marketing material or the real estate agent, the budget that they normally had, which they know they could comfortably cover, slowly starts to creep up. I can go over a bunch of tips on how to buy your first home or property, on saving up for it and all that kind of stuff, but that deserves a whole nother video. I think what's more important to look at is, again, just like when you're buying your first car, people just look at how much the home costs to actually repay the mortgage repayments. And because of that, people get lured into giving a 10% deposit, 15% deposit, 5% deposit in some cases, paying the lender's mortgage insurance up front because, well, honey, don't worry, we can meet the monthly repayments. It shouldn't be an issue. But generally, for some people who are really stretching it, the monthly repayment actually becomes about 80% of their take-home pay. And then they forget to consider their lifestyle expenses, council rates, water, maintenance of the property if anything goes wrong, because something's bound to go wrong, and then anything else that might come along the way just with the property itself, not even with the inflation of lifestyle or if their kid gets sick or anything like that. And so the sixth and final money trap that people fall into in their 20s is not learning about financial literacy and putting a plan together for their future. And for a lot of people, even in their 30s, when I talk to them, if the topic of money comes up, I generally ask them, what do you do with it? Are you looking at investments or do you have any? Just because that's my area of interest and I just want to spark a conversation in general. But a lot of them will be like, oh, well, no, we might save a little bit and that's it. There's really no plan for a path or anything like that, and things will figure themselves out somehow magically. They're just going to figure themselves out and they'll just get to retirement because super's meant to take care of them. Or, in the US, that's for your 401k. Now, being a financial nerd, like many of you who might be watching my video, they're just some very simple, basic budgeting things that you should just be doing. A couple of things I've just mentioned before and a few other traps, and setting up the right bank account. But I've met some, individuals who earn six-figure salaries who don't have things in place or who aren't even maximizing their full potential in terms of investments and savings. And these are individuals who generally think they are financially savvy and have financial literacy, but then they're also the same ones who are stuck in their six-figure job because they need to make repayments on a car, a home, or something else that they've financed or leased out. So it's very important to have the financial literacy. So no matter what you're earning and at what stage you are in your life, preferably within your 20s, which is why I'm making this video, make sure you have at least a very base level of financial literacy. And even without delving into stocks or real estate or cryptocurrency, however you want to invest, start opening up the right bank accounts to put your money into. Find a high interest savings account to put your money into, so at least you're keeping up with inflation as you build up a massive savings for your first home or something like that. And in the long run, you'll reap the benefits when other people haven't put any plans in and then look at you and say, wow, you got really lucky. Oh, wow, they're really good with their money. But again, those are the same people who were told the same tips, the same ideas, but had just never executed on it. And therefore, in decades' time, they're still in the same space they were about 10 to 20 years ago. And that's all for me, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. That's my 6 money traps to avoid in your 20s. Honestly, I've seen it way too often. So hopefully I made a video that can help some of you guys out there. If you really enjoyed it, please give me the like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao.